Hello, Soul Spiralers. Welcome back to today's episode. Today I have Simone Hackett joining me in person, which is such a pleasure as always. And Simone is a Hypnobirthing Australia practitioner, birth and postpartum doula. She's a mum of two beautiful girls and is super passionate about birth and guiding a positive experience to her families that she works with in their pregnancy and beyond. Alex and I, not just me, have just recently finished our hypnobirthing course with Simone, and it was so beautiful and it was so precious for her to be able to come and do it in our birth space at home. And yeah, we just loved it so much. So I couldn't help but ask Simone to come join me today. So thanks for coming on, Simone.
You are so welcome. It was so beautiful to share the program with you and to get to know you and Alex so well over those couple of days. So thank you for having me on and for the potential of sharing these beautiful stories and information with your audience.
Definitely. Yeah. I think that people either know like hypnobirthing, oh yeah, I know that, like I've heard of it, I did it, or they're like, what are you even talking about?
Yes, for sure.
Can you maybe like describe a little bit about what, you're gonna have to deal with my back and forth brain today. We know
I love it.
I'm getting more and more full of the oxytocin. I want to ask you another question first.
Sure, far away.
What nourishes and expands your soul?
So there's two things that completely light me up. And most recently, probably in the last 12 months, I've found yoga. It is the best thing ever.
Yeah.
And I found this beautiful teacher who, through the class, talks about the philosophy of yoga.
It makes such a difference. It changes your whole perspective. That's what got me into yoga, was the philosophy.
I was loving how my body was feeling after every class.
Yeah.
But then, the deeper that we're going into the philosophy, it just rings true to me, every bit of my body. Like last week, she was talking about one of the yamas in one of the sutras, which was the asteya, and this idea of non-stealing, which, face value, okay, cool, don't steal. But you go dig down a little bit through the layers, and just this idea of not taking what's yours in terms of time and energy, and that for me has actually, that's a life lesson for me, and really feeling wholeheartedly every time I had an interaction with someone, that give and take of energy. So for me, it's about just those life lessons and how to interact with the world, and questioning everything and exploring, and I just absolutely love it. So I'm thinking about doing my teacher training next year, actually, and incorporating yoga into my offerings. So pregnancy yoga.
So perfect. Pregnancy yoga is so yummy too.
Oh, amazing.
I'm starting back up pregnancy yoga again next week, I think. So that'll be fun.
Amazing.
I'm doing my second round with the same teacher because I loved it so much.
Oh, great. It's just beautiful. And just having that space to be present and to connect with your baby. And it's like the rest of the world stops, and it's just you and the philosophy, and just love it.
I'm such a class junkie as well, like having like a booking where I have to go to, like, will always make me go, like a Pilates class or a yoga class, and that's kind of like fallen a bit to the wayside, I guess, during pregnancy.
Yeah, for sure.
But I'm doing a prenatal Pilates class when I get there at the right time. This has been a bit of a trend of things that's happening recently, like rocking up to an appointment an hour late, or like turning up to Pilates at the wrong time and not being able to get in. So I'm just flowing with it though.
It's all part of the journey, isn't it?
And you said there was two things. What's the other thing?
Teaching hypnobirthing. It's been a game changer for me in terms of having something in my life where I feel like I'm having such a huge impact, but serving others. There's definitely just this beauty in giving to others, and what I receive back in terms of the beautiful stories, and I can just see it on their faces and the energy and how much they appreciate it. Like I just love it. Like I haven't found this career. I was guided to this career that I just don't feel like I work. Like I just love it.
That's so good. It's such and you can see the bubbly excitement and passion from you. It's so funny, like even how we met was very synchronistic. I feel
absolutely.
Like, because I was looking for like hypnobirthing, and then you came to one of my women's circles.
I'm here.
And you were like, I do hypnobirthing. I was like, okay. I was like, can you please get in touch with me? And then I think I was really annoying to get a hold of for a little while there.
Oh,
But I was like, thank you so much for just like following up with me, because it was so it was just so perfect.
But even that was beautiful, because we ended up doing the private class, which was perfect for just how we were able to delve so much deeper into topics and themes that we wouldn't have the time and space to be able to do in the group classes. And so it was the best.
Oh, we loved it. So can you explain what hypnobirthing is?
Yes, okay, absolutely. So all this talk about it. So it is, in essence, again, a philosophy about birth, but based on evidence. We talk about the physiology of the body, in particular hormones, and how important our hormones are in a birthing body. We talk about tools to help mum remain calm. For those parents birthing in a hospital system, we talk a lot about hospital policies and navigating the hospital systems. Talk about induction, about pain relief. So it's the real end-to-end scope of basically, everything that you are likely to need to know, but it's all presented in a beautiful way that highlights that everyone deserves a positive experience. Everyone deserves to have some level of control over what happens to them, or in a birthing sense. It's a choice. And it's so the end result is the positive journey. So it doesn't actually matter what happens, as in, if you had a natural birth, if you had a cesarean, if you were induced, that is far less important than how you feel at the end.
So true.
And it's just so interesting. Like, you can have on paper someone who looks like they've had great, beautiful birth. They've had the natural birth that they wanted, but they've come out feeling traumatized because they may have had other things happen to them that they felt like they didn't have control over, or they didn't know what the consequence of, accepting something was. They didn't know that they could say no in a hospital setting. And on the other end of the scale, I've had one family in particular that I can think of that had a really, really long labour that ended in a cesarean. And she said to me, I have had so many people say to me, oh, you poor thing, you had that long labour and you've ended up in a cesarean anyway. And she said, no, it was beautiful. Every step of the way, I felt informed and empowered, and I knew what was going on, and it was our choice. And I'm getting shivers. Like, it's just so beautiful.
That real empowerment from being able to choose. Choose your own adventure.
Exactly. Exactly. And really getting back to this idea of birth being a physiologically normal event that sometimes requires medical attention.
Oh yes, that's like the biggest mantra that I would through this experience is I remember when I said to Alex, I don't even know, I think it was years ago, he said to me, babe, would you have a water birth? And I was like, are you thinking about babies now? I think this would have been 4 or 5 years ago, probably longer. And I was like, I haven't thought about how I would birth at all. Are we having a discussion? Are we going to have a baby? And he was like, oh, I just heard this stuff about having a water birth and how awesome it can be. And I was like, oh yeah, that's probably what would happen for me, because we've been into the natural health for a while, though we got on that journey together, which is interesting. But and then when obviously we got pregnant, we were the whole story, I don't even know if I've told the story properly on here of manifesting my birth space.
It's a good one. I think you should if you haven't.
Well, even if I haven't, I'll repeat it for those listening. But pretty much last year we've been doing a lot of conscious conception in the last 2 years, on connecting to spirit baby and doing physical and physiological things to help our bodies to be in the most prime state to offer up for a child to come through. And after our fast last year, which was what we were calling our baby prep fast, because the previous fast was let's sort out our health shit for the final kind of experience. And then we had the baby prep fast, and then after that we spent a lot of time meditating and connecting, and we took mushrooms in I think it would be October last year actually, together in this intention to connect with the baby. And I think we just had too much fun anyway, but we had little pieces, but the strongest piece that came through was you need to find the where you want to birth, you need to find the land. And we'd kind of already been looking to buy but we've kind of been not really committing to anything. So after that, we were like, okay, let's like really put our heads down and like find this property. And in the whole 2 years of like the conscious conception, I kept saying, I'm going to give birth in a yurt in my backyard, because I heard this story of this lady once giving a birth in a bell tent in her yard. And I was like, that sounds amazing. Like, that's what I want. And I just said it so much, like to Alex all the time, or to my friends. And then we found the property that we bought now, and it had a yurt on it. And I was like, I was thinking I'd put a tent up in the backyard. Like, I didn't think there'd be a yurt built. And we were like, that can't be the deciding factor of this property. Yes. But everything else was in our hearts was telling us it was right. And then it's like, and it happened really quickly after that too. Like, we found this place in December and then bought it, and then we settled in March. And then the week that we settled is the week that we conceived. So
baby heard the calling.
Yeah, it really feels like the baby's been like, I want to be here, you know. And it's funny, even in meditation, the baby says to me, I want to be in water. I'm like, oh, Dad heard that years ago.
Yes. Yeah.
Didn't he?
Beautiful.
So yeah, it's really beautiful to be able to do the hypnobirthing course with you in the yurt. Yes. And like be in that space already. But sure. I want to know, I think we touched on it a little bit before we started recording, but you used hypnobirthing with your second child?
Yes. Yeah.
So how did you come to it? How did you find it, like through your experience of going through pregnancy?
So before I had even thought about having kids, with my husband and I have a friend, and they had a baby, and so the husband said it was the most beautiful experience that I've ever had. And I remember thinking, what on earth? Like, I've only ever heard horrible stories. Yeah, it's going to hurt. It's going to be painful. It's going to.
Or the movies.
Legs up in stirrups. Yeah, it happens real quick, and everyone's, the mum's screaming. And I just remember at the time thinking, I'll come back to that when the time's right. So then fast forward, and we conceived our daughter.
Yeah.
And the first thing I did was book into, and they did calm birth. So it's a similar program run by a midwife.
At the hospital?
No, it was independent program as well.
Yeah.
But it was an independent midwife, but it was.
Because calm birth has to be, that's midwife.
It has to be a midwife, correct. Yeah. So, and I didn't actually look around at all. It was just, word of mouth. Like they did it. They had a great experience. Beautiful. I'm going to do it. And it was a great course. It was beautiful. I learned like a lot of the content in Hypnobirthing Australia is the same as calm birth.
Yeah.
However, missing a little bit, but it turned out I had an emergency cesarean. And I just remember thinking, I was just a little bit blindsided, like, whoa, like I was sort of set up for a natural birth. And I just felt like something was just missing. And that, as well as even through the experience, I just always remember thinking, I don't believe that anything's wrong. Like, I don't actually feel like this is an emergency. But because it was such a long labor, there was a couple of risk factors. She had meconium in the waters. Her heart rate, they weren't happy with her heart rate. So the whole thing was beautiful, but it did leave me with just this sense of like I didn't actually give birth. And so it
didn't feel right in your being.
It didn't feel right in my being. And so probably, I just always, it was a beautiful course, and the actual labor was amazing. My husband went from, I don't know what to do and what happens in birth, because, men haven't been in the birth space forever until our generation, really. So they've had no modeling and they don't know what to do. So it really prepared him. And he was just the best. But I just sort of was left with this feeling. And in between my two girls, I found Hypnobirthing Australia, and we are more about having a positive birth experience and having empowerment along the way and understanding choice. And so that was the big difference to me. And I just fell in love with that program, and then obviously began teaching it. And for my second, so she was actually an IVF baby. So
really?
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Wow. So we spent 3 years doing all this stuff.
Yeah.
And it just got to the point where I just mentally just couldn't do it anymore. It was just all consuming. So I just decided that that's what we were going to do. And we were lucky enough to conceive the first time with her, which was beautiful. And even then, I think because that process was so medicalized,
Yeah.
you know, like dragging my then toddler to all of these appointments to get, you know, blood samples and like everything, you know, you're monitoring everything. So I didn't love that. And I always liked the idea of a home birth.
Yeah.
But I just wasn't quite sure. So when we got pregnant with my second, because she was IVF, it was just assumed by the hospital that we would go down the private system. We're like, no, you know, we're just going to go to our public hospital. But at the same time, I engaged with a private midwife just so that I could have both options. Because I wasn't quite sure. We didn't tell anybody. Choose your own adventure. Exactly.
It's going to be the title of the podcast.
Yeah, choose your own adventure. Get all the information, and then when it feels right, do what's right for you and where you feel safest.
Yeah.
Because I loved my midwife immediately, the private midwife, and all of the hospital appointments I had, because it was a vaginal birth after a cesarean, there is a risk of rupture of your uterine. And for me, that risk was so small that it was, for me, insignificant. And everyone's profile of risk is different, but for me, it was just a non-issue. But all of the extra monitoring and all of the other things that I wasn't allowed to do, like have a water birth, I knew was going to impede me. And after every hospital appointment, I'd come back in tears to my husband going, but they want to induce me by 40 weeks, but they won't tell me why. Like, I'm asking them, but where's the evidence? Why? Anyway, so at 36 weeks, my husband and I decided, this is it. We're having a home birth. Just adjust. Yeah. We're so excited, but also it felt like my only choice.
Totally.
I just felt so much safer in my home with the two midwives as opposed to going to the hospital. And it was hands down the best experience of my life. It was just beautiful. I just had so much trust in my body by that time because I was teaching hypnobirthing and also just completely absorbed myself in everything birth.
And you followed your intuition.
Like, every step of the way. Yeah. And I just, I felt all the sensations and I felt her moving down. I wasn't one bit scared. It was so much more intense than first time round. It was 4 hours from first niggle to baby out.
Wow.
So it was really intense. But
because how long was your labor the first time that caused the C?
27 hours, that one. Yeah. And even then, like, it was never a point of this is painful, I don't want to do this anymore. It was quite exhaustion and not being able to, just the fuzziness of, you know, making a decision. Yeah. But yeah, second time around was amazing. And my husband, I remember we got up that morning and I just knew that this was going to be the day. Yeah. And I said, you know,
what was the date?
It was the 8th of December.
Oh my God, that's my due date. Actually, I don't like telling people my due date, but that's wild. That's wild. That's when I'm 40 weeks. Day. It's not my due date. That's when I'm 40 weeks.
Yes. Yeah, it's probably the 95th percentage that she won't actually come on that day. Yeah. I just said she. There you go.
Everyone says different things all the time, but who knows? Yeah. But how many weeks were you?
I was a couple of days shy of 40 weeks. So I actually had them both. Yes, a couple of days early. Yeah.
I feel like I'm going to go all the way to like summer solstice. So who knows?
Who knows?
Which would be 42 weeks. Exactly.
Oh, yeah. Wait for the full moon.
Yeah.
That's a real thing too.
Yeah. I think the full moon's around the 8th, actually. Who knows?
I'll be waiting.
We'll see. That's funny though. Sorry, that was just so much excitement.
Yes.
Oh, the 8th.
It's a good day to have a baby. Yeah. We woke up and it was obviously that's when cricket's on the test, and my husband jokingly said, you know, you better have this baby out before the cricket starts. And then she came out at 9:30. I was like, oh, you can watch the cricket now if you want. You didn't.
No. Yeah. Good choice.
Yeah. And just so I had her in the water, and it was just every single bit as amazing as I hoped.
Yeah.
And just like the way that my husband looked at me, like just, you know,
this powerful woman.
Yes, just so beautiful, and complete trust in the midwives. And then so she came out and I was cuddling her for a little while, and then I actually got on the couch to birth the placenta, and I had a postpartum hemorrhage. But I just was so like high on oxytocin and endorphins and trust. Like I just knew they're only going to transport me if I absolutely have to go. And that's great. I want to be safe, but it's just beautiful. It was the best.
Yeah. So good.
And then I just toddled up to my bed, and that's pretty much where I stayed for a couple of weeks.
So
Like that was the
good.
best.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I feel like, I think this is like, there's no, like, if the hospital feels like the safest place for you, then go there. But the
100%.
hospital does not feel like the safest place for me. So that
Yep.
was never really like in the cards.
It's not on the cards
for me. And that's just how I feel. But I know other
Yep.
people wouldn't always feel that way.
Yep.
I totally understand that. That's fine. Because I think
Yeah.
Alex can get a bit righteous about things, and I'm waiting to see what our birth experience is like, because depending on how it goes, he'll
Yeah.
get real righteous.
Yeah.
But about like because there is so much intervention, I guess, like in the space in the hospital.
Yes.
You know, and I feel like pregnancy is almost like priming you to not trust. The way that the providers perhaps give advice is priming you to perhaps not trust yourself, so that when you're in that birth or labor experience, like answering to an authority outside of yourself, but actually like, I mean, I very strongly believe that you, like whoever it is, they know their body better than anyone else, you know?
Absolutely.
So they should be the one to be able to be listened to rather than
Absolutely.
like pushed intervention onto.
Correct.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree with you. Like I can talk, I can talk all day about that too, because at the end of the day, I see, well, lots of things. Where do I start? But something like I touched on before about my risk profile of the uterine rupture is going to be different to the next person. So I don't see it as the hospital's job to say, we think you should do A, B, or C. I think their job is to say there is a risk of uterine rupture. The risk is whatever it is. You know, here are your options. How does that feel for you? And then you discuss each of the options, and the parents can then go, yeah, we really would prefer to birth in hospital because we don't, you know, that's
be the
too much
basic human right of it.
It's
it doesn't really
right.
happen like that,
No.
though, does it?
What tends to happen is it's just hospital policy that VBAC mums or parents just have, you know, all of these extra restrictions on them, and like you were sort of again touching on about the hierarchy and the power play, unless you are passionate or really feel like something's not quite right and you question, a large of the population, large proportion will just say, okay, like they do this every day. They know they know best, but it's
they know their protocols and they know what has worked for them, but maybe that's not what is actually going to work for the individual in terms of the experience. Like you'll get the baby at the end,
100%.
but it might not be the experience that like you look. And the other thing that I realized the other day was like, obviously there are so many people that just like get pregnant, okay, go to the doctor, like this is the process, whatever, and then they go through this experience and then be like, hold on a second, like could I have questioned half of that?
But it's so true. Like this is one of the first things I tell my parents is you are not sick.
No.
Like you're not going into hospital to be saved or to be cured. You just happen to have you've grown a human. Like you have grown a human, and that human needs to come out. And your body can do that. So it just puts that power play a little bit different, and you are there for their experience and their knowledge, but they're never going to know what you're feeling or what your instincts are.
You just brought me back to the thing that I was going to talk about before I talked about the yurt.
Oh yeah.
Which is when I was talking to Alex about like birth choices and like how we were going to birth and it was going to be at home. And I don't know where I'd read something somewhere, or like it's something that really stuck with me. It's like birth is not a medical experience. It's a natural experience that my body can go through completely unassisted medically, but sometimes it requires medical assistance, but it's not a medical event.
Exactly.
And when I said that to him, that was just like solidified everything. He was like 100%, like, you know, the doctors weren't here with us when we conceived the baby, like, you know, they weren't like coaxing it in, like they don't need to coax it out either in most cases.
And I mean there's a lot in that as well, like our bodies are constantly assessing the environment to see is something dangerous, or do I, you know, the fight or flight mechanism. And even if the hospitals did everything perfect on their side, it's still a somewhat foreign place to you know, these parents, and there's still bright lights and there's still questions and there's still so much that our body is subconsciously monitoring. And so it's even when they're doing all the things that they can possibly do to support the natural physiology of birth, it's just not the same as being in a place that you're familiar and comfortable with.
I 100% agree with that.
Yeah.
And I've loved reading that Rachel Reed book. Like all my friends that are pregnant now are reading that because it's just such a powerful book. And I've spoken about it on the podcast before, as well. But it's just so powerful, like reading through like all the stuff that happens with your hormones and like what inhibits those hormones like happening. And like I love one of my biggest takeaway from hypnobirthing. My favorite thing was such a good reminder was just throw love at it. I've written that as a birth affirmation for myself now as well. And it's like, oxytocin fucking fixes everything.
It fixes everything in birth. Absolutely. Just throw
and in
some
life,
love at it.
really.
And life, true.
If you throw love at it in life, generally it feels much better.
Absolutely. And fear is the one thing that really mucks up a physiological birth. So if you have love thrown at the situation, love and fear just can't really exist in the same moment. So if you've got somebody there, like you were just talking about Alex too, and having that support partner there, having that person there who presumably loves you the most in the world and you feel safe with, just them being there can really make the birth experience beautiful because it releases your oxytocin and it inhibits the adrenaline and all the sort of cortisol, all the stuff that mucks up a birth. Basically,
totally. It's like it's everyone's so big on regulating nervous systems at the moment, which I think is so important. But how regulating is it just to like hug someone you love? That in itself. So like if birth could just be like one long hug with someone you love, like it's gonna go really
smooth. Absolutely.
Positively. So I think that's so powerful. And I feel that the hypnobirthing course especially, like it was so great for me and I feel really empowered through the experience. But I also like for Alex it was so good because like so much stuff, like I'm a bit of a nerd with like birth stuff anyway, like you are, so just keep chatting. But and not all people are like that, but especially in my choices I feel like I kind of want to be informed in anything. But doing the hypnobirthing course for Alex, it was like what you were saying about what even calm birthing did for your partner earlier was like he was just he was so great and like such a rock because he knew his role. And I think that's like such an important thing. I think through this rite of passage, like it's such a big rite of passage for a woman, but it's also a really big rite of passage for the partner. And often like obviously most of the time, like depending on what the situation is, but most of the time you did it together to create the child, and then the mother carries it. Why would you not like be getting it out together? I don't know. That's how I think about it. Like there needs to be like them to feel like they have a clear role, and I think hypnobirthing really creates that. It really creates that container of to not fall like into doctrinated things, but like that clear role of masculine, clear role of feminine, so the woman can just surrender and be in her full feminine force of birthing and feel really held and supported in that because her partner knows how to do that. That,
and they're not scared of the process anymore either.
Totally.
Like as humans we like to feel in control and we like to understand, so I really feel from the partners, or both, but mostly the partners that come into the course, they're just fearing the unknown. Like they just don't know what to expect and just presume it's going to be painful.
Because they've only seen the movies.
Exactly. And have this sense of, I don't want my partner to be in pain and feeling helpless that I don't know what to do to stop that. So it's this trying to resist and trying to change what it is. So it's reframing that to, this is all perfect. Well, the sensations that mum's feeling is helping to bring your baby here. And yes, it's intense. Absolutely. But, we're getting a baby, we're birthing a baby, and just looking at this from that perspective and helping them be comfortable with it, as opposed to, in some cases, if the dad doesn't, or if the partner does want to take the pain away, sometimes the birthing mother is worried about them and them being uncomfortable. And so it's just, and then back on the having the partner as your rock, she doesn't feel like she can surrender to the, you know, to the surges or the contractions anymore.
Which prevents the oxytocin from
Absolutely.
flowing. Just like goes in the cycle, doesn't it?
So I definitely, the partners get as much out of the course as the mums. Absolutely.
Totally. Alex got so much out of it. He loves it. He loves stuff like that though.
I loved it. Like his little face lit up and he was asking all these questions. He was into it. I love it.
He's so into things like that.
I love it.
He just loves, he's like me. We both love learning, you know, and he's really good at like dissecting things and breaking them down and just taking action. It's like, you're giving me the list to take action on. Great. Which I think a lot of like masculine energies that I know, like just I like that job. You know, just give me the list so I can tick it off, you know, because then cool, rather than like the one thing you didn't write on the list that you told them that was like the number one thing, they'll forget because they just like follow the list, you know. I was listening to a podcast the other day with someone talking about that. So yeah, that's funny. But back to, I mean, we were talking about oxytocin and like the hormones a bit, and obviously there are other hormones that come into play to be able to birth a child. My understanding, and I may hinder this, who knows, but often like the main form of like intervention induction to begin with is a level of producing like synthetic oxytocin.
Syntocin.
And so, but I think you were saying to me that they say like it's the same thing, but also but it comes from a different place in your body, so it affects you differently.
Exactly. So so
it often doesn't stop pain because enough oxytocin should produce the opioids to have the pain relief, but the synthetic type perhaps doesn't, because it doesn't come from the same place.
So the actual molecule itself, so the syntocin, which is the synthetic form of oxytocin, so they're both exactly the same. It's just that our beautiful bodies produce it in the brain, so we receive it better because we have oxytocin receptors in our brain, so we get all the beautiful benefits from that, as opposed to being induced and it's through the blood. So it's how our body will still produce oxytocin, but not to the same extent as it would in a spontaneous labor.
And is oxytocin in the brain production, it's related to DMT? Do you know that?
I don't know that.
Do you know, my sister was telling me something the other day about like, and I've had other people tell me the story since as well, of like in tribes, like people going and doing ayahuasca when they go into labor. Like obviously these tribes, like they're already regularly doing that, or going and like having, I don't know if Amanita muscara was like another thing, but it's all like stuff that's like very DMT like producing in a way.
Well, that would make sense because it's the same feeling. Like when a birthing woman will often say, she's going into sort of an outer body experience in the birthing zone, and so it's it's
so
probably
layer that with ayahuasca as well. But if you're already so embedded in your experience with that plant, like in a tribe, like I could understand
you'd be more
I wouldn't go and do ayahuasca for the first time, like going into labor.
Absolutely not.
I wouldn't even go do mushrooms, even though that's not my first time in labor. That sounds like, you know, but I'm not integrated with the plant in that way that these like shamanic experiences would be. But so it was making me wonder about how DMT affects like the oxytocin and how that works together.
I think we'll have to look into
we'll have to look into that. Now you're curious about it.
I am
anyway.
so curious. But so that you're absolutely right about that part of it, as in the molecules, but it's our uterus responds differently to it as well, because our body, as we know, is pretty darn amazing at understanding how much and how much we can take as a birthing woman and how much the baby can take. So when we're having a surge or a contraction, that's obviously compressing the baby. So it's quite normal for the baby's heart rate to respond because they're getting squished. When a woman is induced, she's more likely to have surges that are what she'll say are on top of each other,
like hard and fast.
So she might get a little break, but not much, as opposed to if she went into spontaneous labor. It's quite normal for to ride the wave
on off.
Yes, exactly. And then the wave, you'll come down from the wave, you'll have a rest, have a break, mum gets a break, baby gets a break. So one of the biggest risks to induction is actually fetal distress. So the hospital is trying to balance having the contractions, the surges strong enough to actually get baby out, but not to distress baby.
But they don't, it's like a really hard thing to figure out, isn't it? Because everyone's got different composition. Every
woman's different, every baby's different, every birth's different. Like,
yeah,
some women just have really long sort of surges, and others have, you know, more intense but shorter. So yeah, everyone's different, and the hospital's just doing their best to
try and figure it out. But it's like taking like any kind of drug, like anyone could respond differently to that.
Yeah. And it also depends if mum's body was ready or not, right?
Totally.
Like if we're inducing someone at 37 weeks as opposed to 42, like it might just be a sniff that gets mum at 42 weeks as opposed to giving her quite a high dose of the syntocinon. And it's just, so there's risks in terms of medical risk, but it's also the experience for mum is, generally speaking, quite different. Because it is so much more intense. She is more likely to want the pain relief because her body hasn't naturally had the time to build up the endorphins, which is our pain relieving, beautiful, 20 to 40 times more powerful than opioids. Like it's how we can get through this. So without that build up, it's just quite often too intense.
And so then that's kind of like what starts this cascade of intervention sort of to occur.
Yes,
where you often ends up in C-section.
Correct. Yes. Yeah. So this is, I'm so passionate about induction, and I always want to say this with a grain of salt because it is definitely circumstances where it is saving lives. But so I think the latest stats were 2020, and only 42% of women went into labour spontaneously.
Oh my God. I don't even remember. I remember probably responding in the same way when you told me that, but still trips me out. So that means like 52% are not naturally?
I think it's 1 in 3. So I think it was 35% are induced, and the rest are planned cesareans.
Oh my God.
I know. So and
again, there is a time and place for those things as well.
100%.
But
absolutely.
that sounds like a very high number for that time and place.
Correct. Yeah. And so over the last 20 years or so, there's statistically speaking no difference in the outcomes for mum and baby, but just the induction and the intervention rates are skyrocketing. So it isn't a medical challenge.
Research doesn't show that it's changing the outcome.
But we keep doing the same thing.
But we're doing more of the other thing.
Correct. Yeah. So it's just about, I see a big part of my role as a Hypnobirthing Australia practitioner is just really informing parents about the risks of the induction, because you want to be really sure that this is the right thing for you if you're going to go down that route. And if you choose, if you've got all the information and you say, like for our family, I really think that's the best way forward for us. Beautiful, because then you can be at peace with your whatever happens. You've had a choice, and that's what it's about. And you can also have some control over what happens before you actually get induced, so that you can try and build up those endorphins before the synthetic, or and ask them to put it on low. And so there's other things that you can do to try and prepare your body
just from having the information.
Correct.
I'm curious, like, because one of the things that I have learned is that once the baby has finished developing its lungs, which is the last part that finishes developing, it sends like a message to the woman.
Exactly.
And energetically, hormonally, so that she knows like she can go into labor, and then if she's in a safe space, that will happen.
Exactly.
So if that hasn't occurred, but then the induction occurs, then, and I'm sure this is not something that we would have statistics on, like how many people do we have issues with things later in life that could be relating to that immune response of the lungs not being fully developed, or like, it's just really interesting to me to think about. Because it would make sense to me that everyone gets sicker because they haven't had the full
they're not fully developed. 100%. And that's again why one of the other things that we talk about is fully developed is somewhere around 39 to 41 weeks in terms of the baby. So if you're going to induce before the 39, you want to be like super duper duper sure that that's something that you want to do because of exactly what you've just outlined. But I mean, it's probably not something that we would ever
really
know or
Maybe in the long gone future.
Possibly. Yeah.
Who knows?
When we start to become more, educated, because there's so much about birth that we don't know. Like
even like the whole like 40-week due date kind of thing, and then like outside of that, like then it becomes a risk and stuff. It's like, but hold on, like it's so subjective of like how many weeks along you are anyway. Like I obviously haven't gone through any hospital experience, but I have friends that are like early first trimester still, just coming out, second trimester. And when they went for their first hospital visit, they thought they were a certain weeks, and the doctor had agreed with that. And then once they had a scan, you could actually be further along. Should we change your due date?
Yeah.
And she was like, no, because she wants to have a home birth. Yeah. And if she
goes over 40 weeks,
I think it was 40 and a half weeks. If she goes over 40 and a half weeks, then they won't home birth with her. And she's like, but you could have just changed just that one moment thing, being like, time. Could be like, maybe. But then once it gets to that point, it's not like, maybe, like, it's like, no, you must come into the hospital.
Absolutely.
Like, that's so weird.
It is. It's one of my bugbears. There's quite a few, but that is because due date or estimated due date is one of the biggest reasons for induction.
Yeah. And fear, I feel as well, you know?
Yeah. But exactly. So, and I mean, if for IVF babies, you're pretty sure when you conceive. Yeah. But most people outside of that, I mean, it could easily be a week either side.
Yeah.
So you're right. Like at the start of the pregnancy, it's all, we'll just change it. It's no big deal. We'll, whatever. And unless the parents are forward looking, they'll go, okay, cool. We'll just change it. And then all of a sudden at the end of it, there's all this fear about your baby not being out on a particular date and stillbirth going up, and you're like, but I don't actually know if we are 40 weeks. Like,
exactly. Who knows? And one of my health practitioners said the other day, my chiro said, well, what's your cycle like? Like that affects how many weeks the baby will be in gestation for as well. So like I was like, oh, well, mine's pretty regular. She's like, oh, you probably come like pretty close to 40 weeks then. But if your cycle was like 35 days,
it's definitely going to be out.
It's going to be way longer, you know? And that was like, hearing that, I was like, oh my God, that makes so much sense. Hearing that. It's like, if all of our periods can be so different, how can we all have the exact same time that we're meant to be pregnant?
Doesn't it blow your mind? And then you think, for all of these women who either have been induced or have had the fear of God put into them to be induced because, you know, of the stillbirth risks, when it didn't just wasn't right.
Yeah, and it comes back to some of that stuff that like Rachel Reed was talking about. It's like the hospitals have their protocols and processes that they follow to ensure that they're not putting themselves at risk a lot of the time, but it's not actually usually research backed.
Yes.
Like that, reading that in there, I was like, oh my gosh.
And one of the big ones I think that's coming out at the moment is the CTG monitors. So
is that the band?
The bands, yes.
Oh, we were talking about this.
Yeah, and that actually was brought in without any evidence, but just this idea of, you know, if we're constantly monitoring mum and baby, of course that's going to be safer. Yeah. But now, you know, fast forward, I actually don't know how long it's been in, maybe 15, 20 years. Now we've realised that there's no better outcome CTG as opposed to a fetal Doppler, but we do know that it increases the risk of cesareans and like forceps and the von Tuss, assisted deliveries. But now it's like we have to fight on the other end to undo the protocol that was never evidence-based in the first place.
Yeah.
And it
you know what I'm thinking of now is like these things that like so many things that, and I guess it's like, I feel like at the end of the day, like people have like good interests. They're like, this will be helpful. Let's do this thing. Just like that doctor giving women chloroform knocking them out when they got pregnant. And then he realized, she gave birth without needing that. She didn't need to be knocked out.
Yeah.
And like that was going on for like how long? You were...
Back in the dark ages, it was just a normal, natural thing to do. But I mean, it started like hundreds of years ago, but it was being still used as I think 60s and 70s, and
60s and 70s. I thought it was like the 1900s.
It was started then, but it was still being used like recently, as were episiotomies. Like that was just stock standard.
I mean, episiotomies is pretty common now anyway.
Not as common as that. Literally every single birthing woman would come in and have an episiotomy.
Everyone.
It was just stock standard.
Oh my God.
It was just this idea and belief that a woman's body wouldn't stretch and open up. So,
but like, if she's going to tear, let her tear. Like, you know, if her body wants to do that, you know, like, rather than you cut her.
And that, I mean,
I guess like, this could be a contentious point, but like, people still circumcising their children like so commonly now.
Yes.
I feel like is almost another side of that. Like, if you're willing to cut your child, then like, of course you're going to be okay with getting cut during labor.
Yeah, it's not going to help throw love at the situation, though, is it? Like,
neither of those things feel very loving, do they?
Yeah.
No, I mean, I wouldn't feel good cutting my child's thing, but that just doesn't feel like a love-based choice.
Yeah.
And I was talking to you about this with the placenta stuff.
Yes, the encapsulation.
Yeah, and I think Alex has just been like, let's just go with 2. We'll see what options. But the priority for me is a lotus birth, because that is not a fear-based option. Yeah. Whereas encapsulating my placenta sounds freaking amazing. Yeah. But it feels like for me that would be a choice coming from fear, or from like, oh, well, I'm trying to eliminate this possibility of this thing going wrong, rather than being like, if I came from love, the lotus makes sense to me, because then that's the baby choosing when it detaches. But who knows? I may yet eat my words
again. You know? This is understanding your choices, isn't it? Like,
exactly.
And you don't necessarily have to make a choice right now.
No, we can make a choice then. Yeah. You know, who knows? Maybe the cord will be so short, it'll be like, lotus is just not possible. Yes. You know, and so then let's eat. But I also feel like I couldn't eat all of my placenta, because I feel like I need to give part of it into the earth to like bury in a space. Yeah. Like, I very strongly believe in that. But again, there's so many things.
There's so many things.
I was saying to Alex the other day, I was like, what would it be like if I think he said this as well, but it's like, if you just didn't talk to anyone about any of this stuff, and you just like didn't get anyone's stories, and you didn't know anything, like, what would just happen? Would it just, because you know, we've been comparing it to fasting like a lot.
Yeah, I love it. That's fascinating. Yeah.
But when I did my first water fast, he asked me, do you want to come do a water fast with me? And I was like, my heart was telling me yes. I had resistance, but my heart told me yes. And all the resistance was external to me, not internal. Yeah. And so I was like, okay. No, all the resistance was internal, not external. Like, I asked my boss for 8 weeks off work. She's like, yeah, great. I was like,
amazing.
Okay, well, that's that's the thing that I thought was going to be hard. Yeah. So it's all the resistance in me. Okay, I've got some things to work through. But I actually didn't, like, the guy that we went and fasted with, I didn't like really watch any of his videos. Like, I knew the basis of what we were going to be doing, but I didn't actually go and like do that much research on it. I just like trusted that was what my body was telling me. Yes, that's the right choice for you. And Alex, on like day 2, he got in real fear state. He's like, what have we done? What have we signed up for? And I was like, this was your idea, mate. What are you cracking it about? I was like, we're here. But I think I'm quite like that. Like, if I've like decided on something, like, I'm going to follow it through, you know? And it made me like reflect on like, I wonder what this experience would be like if I didn't have any external information to even like go for. And I'm glad that I'm still researching and doing these things, but am I doing those things because I'm trying to like battle against others that don't trust birth? Yeah. Maybe a little bit.
Maybe.
Who knows?
Yeah.
I do feel like I need to like have my back of like, I'm doing this in this way and I've researched it and I understand it, which I think is a level, there's responsibility there, but it's also like, where do you draw a line with that?
Definitely.
You know?
Yes.
It's an interesting thing to reflect.
Yeah.
But yeah, because everyone's like so risk focused in life, I feel. And it's, you know, I've had a man at a restaurant like yell at me about having a home birth. And so
right.
Yeah. And I was like, really like, okay, sir, thank you. Where's my boyfriend? Is he coming? My partner is he gonna be here soon? Like, because he was obviously triggered by his own experience. And yeah, and I one of the other things he said really stuck with me, because he was talking about well, he'd had a home birth with his wife, funnily enough, but he was yelling at me about having a home birth. And then he's like, you know, my wife doesn't even know what happened. She didn't even know what happened during the thing. Like, she would have no idea. And it's like, well, good. That sounds like she was pretty in a good oxytocin bubble. Yeah. But he was like annoyed by that. It was really weird. It was a really weird experience. And I really like went in, that was like start of second trimester, and I went really quite like, I'm not going to talk to people about this for a while there, because people just push negative stories on you.
They do. And that's exactly why when my husband and I were even exploring home birth, we did not say a word to anybody.
You hear that a lot.
Didn't say a word, because I just didn't want to have to justify my reasons, because it depends how it's presented to you. If it's questions just curious, or if it's more of it like that man.
Yeah.
And then I never wanted to feel like I wanted to question
that you were doing the wrong thing.
Exactly.
By making this choice.
Could not have that in my space.
Totally. Because at the end of the day, like, it's your choice. Just like with anything. Like when someone's like, I don't think you should do that. And it's like, well, if I need to go and have that experience and do that for me, then like I need to go do that, you know?
Yes.
That's okay. That's okay.
Yeah.
But again, it's like everyone's trying to like, everyone's so everyone's so scared of death and endings, really. It's inevitable, guys. We're all gonna die.
Every day is one step closer.
We're all gonna die at some point. Perfect. So coming back to some of the hypnobirthing stuff around, it's really big focused on like meditation, I guess.
Yes. Yes, the mindset stuff.
Yeah. And is that based off trying to eliminate stress during pregnancy and then stress during birth and labor, would you say?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So just trying to promote, again, throwing the love at it, and trying to promote the parasympathetic nervous system to make us feel relaxed leading up to it, but also as a way to rewire our subconscious mind. So one of the tools that I personally love is the affirmations.
I've been listening to, every time I get in the car, like I just put it on at the beginning, and then like I listen to whatever other music after. And
it's, you don't even necessarily listen to it, like you don't have to be sort of present, you're tuning in and out. But it's the more that your mind hears those things, the more quickly it can default to something that's going to serve you. So for example, a lot of women will fear the pain of birth. So one of the affirmations that I love is, each surge is bringing you closer to your baby. So it's just rewiring the sensation that you're feeling to, it's almost a means to an end. Like it's intense, but it's all perfectly beautiful and natural, and your body's going to produce the hormones to get you through that. You've kind of just got to almost take a back seat and just, go one at a time. Don't look too far forward. Don't look back. And so that's an example. And there might be other women who are, who have parents that have had cesareans or induced births, or it might be, a hospital saying, we think you've got a big baby. So you can have affirmations that, oh no, that's another one.
I hate that one.
You can have affirmations that help with, my baby's the perfect size for my body. And just even on things like that, the fear around particular challenges, like I think I've got a big baby, is understanding, does that even matter? And how beautifully designed our bodies are to cater. Your body's producing a baby that's the perfect size. And our bones soften to make way for this baby. The baby's head molds to your pelvis. Like it's amazing. And more often than not, it's the women being told that you've got a big baby and then fearing that's causing them to tense up. And that is actually more challenging than birthing a big baby.
That's what a real contraction is like that closing off of like, I can't,
Yes.
There's actually, I think it was that book, Love Without Conditions. He actually talks about how important it is. I think he might call it pain, but let's call it the intensity of birth needs to be there so that the baby can be ejected from the body. Because if it wasn't intense, then it would just stay in there, and the mother would be happy for it to stay in there. Where actually the intensity and like, whatever you want to describe it as, that experience, it actually creates the opportunity for her to be like, okay, we've got to get this out.
Yes, absolutely.
It creates a driving factor. Like there's a real push-pull of needing, you need that challenge to like be like, okay, we've got to actually get this out.
That, and our body again is amazing. So it's got this beautiful positive feedback system whereby the more intense mum is feeling the sensations, the more oxytocin that she'll produce, more of those more of the pain relieving elements, more of that love and the zoned out kind of feeling. The endorphins go up, and then it will be even more intense. So it's perfectly designed to
So
get out
perfect.
your
Yeah.
baby. We just mindset. I am a big believer that your body knows what to do, and that's kind of 20% of the challenge, but the 80% is the mental side of it, and understanding how our thoughts can influence physically what happens in our body.
I guess it's like, even like if we think about, obviously stress during pregnancy is going to lead more likely to issues, just like stress in life is going to lead to more likely disease. So
definitely,
it's like, it's really one and the same thing.
I
love the thing of like your body's going to birth this baby. Like, you don't really actually get a choice. Like, it's gonna it's not gonna stay in there forever.
Baby's got
And a friend of mine was telling me this story the other day, that she'd heard from a home birth midwife that this, actually, I think I don't know, if traditional birth attendant or something like that, but this lady was in a coma and she was pregnant. Have you heard this story?
I think it's not common, but absolutely it's happened.
And she just like labored and gave birth still in the coma. Like, if that's not the biggest like description of like, your body will birth the child, and the child
despite
will,
what you do,
you don't have to do anything. Like, your body will get the baby out.
Absolutely.
And you can naturally birth whilst in a coma. Like, so that is I feel like it's a really good factor to be like, I can trust this experience. I can trust birth. I can trust the body.
Fascinating.
So interesting. I was like, I love that story. It really makes you just like, that's a great story to have in my subconscious.
I just have to just be.
It's
almost like you're a vessel, and just you've just got to
portal.
focus on you're a portal. That's a much nicer way to put it.
Could be a vessel. Nice bars. Who knows? A portal, a walking portal. Some of my friends say.
Birth is just, it's magic. It's beautiful, and it sets, having a beautiful, positive experience sets you up for the challenges and beauty of parenthood. Like, that's for me is probably even bigger than the birth experience, is having parents who trust themselves and trust their body and trust their instincts to be able to keep a baby alive, and to be able to parent their baby in a way that feels right to them and their family, as opposed to, again, all that external noise and what I should be doing or shouldn't be doing, or like, because that's huge. Because
that conditioning doesn't end with birth. It's in parenthood, it's even more so. You should be doing this like this. You should be, again, as Alex is always like, well, what would we be doing if we were in the forest and no one was around and it was just us? Like, we'd just be doing that, you know.
I'm taking that. Thanks,
and I guess that was like that was one of the concepts that made us decide to fast. It's like, if we were in the forest and like living there and we were like experiencing health issues, what would we do? Every other animal does fast. You know,
fascinating.
So that's why we like got
so almost convinced me to do it.
You could also do some like tremor release stuff, because all the animals do that too.
I'll go there.
A bit of TRE. I have some fun questions for you, Simone.
Cool.
What is do you know your sun, moon, and rising signs?
No, I don't.
Let's look it up.
Look it up. 6th of November. That's me. I'm a Scorpio. That's about all I can tell you.
Soon. And you have a Saggy and what's your eldest daughter?
My husband and my daughter are Tauruses.
Oh, I love Taurus.
I love them dearly, but it is definitely,
it's interesting. You do Scorpio with them Taurus, because it's like the opposite.
Yes,
the exact opposite.
I feel like my husband and I definitely like the balance in the yin and the yang. Like we're good like that.
Let me. Baby saying hi. Sun in Scorpio, ascendant in Capricorn. I like it. My moon's in Capricorn.
Oh,
so your rising or your ascendant is Capricorn, and your moon in Aquarius. Oh my God, no wonder we get along so well. Because I'm Aquarius sun, Capricorn moon,
amazing,
but then Virgo rising. And then your Scorpio sun, Aquarius moon, and Capricorn rising.
It's all meant to be.
We can talk about it more later. Do you know your human design?
I have done it, but I can't remember. Do you know if you're a
projector or like a manifesting generator?
Manifesting generator.
Yeah, I could see it.
Yes.
I've lost my thing here. Forgot what I'm doing. What's your favorite fruit?
Oh, this is going to sound strange coming out of my mouth, because I always hated it, but now I love it, and it's mango.
Oh.
Love it.
You should have tried durian.
I should have tried it. I couldn't. You love
You
it
might
too
have
much.
hated
I
it,
couldn't
and then
do
you would
it.
have loved
I
it.
could see the love in your eye.
Okay, it was a lot though. It was good. We had durian on our last hypnobirthing day. It was great. It was the best day of my life. Yeah, no, I love mango too. It's one of my faves.
So good.
If you could turn to a moment in your life and re-experience it again, like not do it over, but just like be there and re-experience it again, what would you return to?
Oh, my home birth, second daughter. It was just epic. It was, empowerment plus endorphins, oxytocin peaking. Just felt like I could literally do anything.
So good. Yeah. Did you choose the forest or the ocean?
This is tough. Oh, ocean.
Yeah. Yes, you're a water.
I'm a water sign.
Do you have a plant or a flower that you work with the most or at the moment?
Peace lilies are all around my house. I'm going to say peace lilies.
One of my clients used to say that when her peace lily was flowering, there was something special was going to happen that day.
Oh,
so yeah, I always remember that now when I see a peace lily.
Oh wait,
do you have a favorite crystal?
I do have one. I'm just trying to remember what it is. It's the brown one.
Smoky quartz?
No.
Citrine. Oh, citrine. Like an orangey.
Orangey, yes.
But actually, yeah, if it came, because citrine can come from either amethyst or smoky. So if it was a smoky-based citrine, it would be more brown.
It was more.
If it was amethyst, it would be more orange.
Yep.
And you know that they fire those in the oven, like a man-made oven, to turn them into citrine, because it's just amethyst, that would have been in the ground longer to make citrine. So to get natural citrine is quite rare.
Yeah,
but you can get it. Super interesting. I know I've got crystal knowledge that.
Yes. Love it.
Do you have a spirit animal or an animal? If you were an animal, what would you be?
Oh, manta ray.
Yeah,
love them. I haven't swum with one yet, but that was going to be my 40th present that we just haven't done it yet.
Did you see any when you went to Stradbroke recently?
We saw one.
Yeah.
Oh,
I've seen them at Noosa.
Are you kidding?
Yeah, like in the water near me, like a little one.
Oh,
so cute.
So amazing. There's lots of stingrays at Noosa River. Oh, I just think they're just beautiful.
Wait, so the manta rays are actually the big ones?
The big ones.
Yeah, like in Moana.
Yes, Moana. Yeah, they're like a meter and more.
Yeah, wow. So you saw a manta ray at Stradbroke?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Actually, no, I've seen them in Cairns and they jump out of the water.
Yes. Yeah. So beautiful.
So wild. Yeah.
I just love them.
Is there any last words or summations you'd like to leave the listeners with about the conversation today before we tell them how they can get in touch with you?
I would say that birth is most beautiful when we surrender and we trust the process, and it's almost a process of reminding us that we know what to do and we don't have to look outside. We know what to do.
Yeah.
And it's magic and it's beautiful, and everyone deserves a beautiful experience.
I love that. And so how can people work with you if they wanted to work with you?
So my hypnobirthing classes are at Noosa Mind and Body in Noosaville. So I do group classes every sort of 6 to 8 weeks. I do lots of private classes. I am also a birth doula. And I generally just work with my hypnobirthing parents because I've already got a beautiful relationship with them. Yeah. And also postpartum doula. So my website is peacefulbirthing.com.au. And my Instagram is peaceful_birthing. Any of those would be wonderful.
And do you only do it in person or do you also do it online?
If there's a reason why someone can't do it in person, I've actually got a lady in Greece at the moment.
Yeah, because I do have a lot of listeners in other parts of Australia, so that's why I'm asking that.
I do. And I can definitely organise even group classes, like if you've got, I call a bump buddy. So that sort of reduces the cost a little bit, and it just makes it a little bit more fun too if you're in other parts of Australia or other parts of the world.
Though the one-on-one was amazing for us, so I would opt into that and again and again.
I love it.
Thank you so much for the chat today, Simone. It's been so wonderful and
so fun.
That's what our intention was.
Exactly. Thanks for having me.